Hi, I'm Dawn Damari, and this is another episode of Teaspoon of Healing. Today I have a guest with me, Susan Farese. Susan is a public relations professional, a nurse, a veteran, an author, and an actor. Hi, Susan.
Hi, Dawn. Thank you for having me. So happy to be here.
Thank you for joining me. I'm really happy that you're here. And you also have a podcast as well.
I have a beginning of a
Big podcast.
podcast.
That's right.
In fact,
Oh, okay.
I'm
Oh,
launching.
okay. I saw you post about that. So, well, that's
Yes.
congratulations. That's great. I love to encourage to meet other podcasters. Wonderful. So, it's really nice to meet you. So, you have a very interesting background as a nurse, a communicator, a PR specialist, an author, and an actor. Do you mind sharing a little bit about your background and experience with people that are watching or listening?
Sure, absolutely. Well, I'm kind of a reinvention maven. I've reinvented many times due to geographic locations or just situations in my life, professionally and personally. I started out in New Jersey, a small family, just one brother, and grew up in a small town in upper, like I guess, northern Jersey. Went to Catholic school up until eighth grade, actually, and then moved to a different part of New Jersey in eighth grade. And it was a totally different culture in both places that I lived. Um, Went to high school. I joined the chorus and the concert choir and the drama club. And that's what changed my life, basically, because I was shy from that move into eighth grade to a totally different area. Went to college, got my bachelor's in nursing first in Pennsylvania, and then joined the Navy as well as the Army. So 3 years in the Navy, transferred to the Army Nurse Corps. So for about almost 13 years, totally active duty. And I was a major when I got out in 1990. And the military sent me for my master's degree in nursing. So I got that in 1986. And when I got out of the military in 90, I just said, what do I want to do? Because I was in bureaucracy for quite a long time. My husband said, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to motivate people. I want to inspire people. So I became an entrepreneur and started my first company was Prosper Development Systems, which stood for professional, staff, and personal development. And I did some continuing education for nurses, medical bill auditing, preparing for joint commission surveys, a lot in healthcare. And before that, though, I did the Myers-Briggs, and it showed me that I was very entrepreneurial and creative in ENTP. So that really reflected what I've done with the rest of my life so far. I'm still not done, but reinvention, change, and knowing what my personality type was has led me to where I am today. It's been a very interesting life. I became a mom a little bit later in life at 42, and at 50, I became an actor after doing that in high school, of course, and joined SAG-AFTRA. I've done a lot of really interesting things, and then became a PR person or a consultant around 2011, doing some press release for the kids that were in a theater production my daughter was in with adults. I did a press release and the director said, you need to be on our board. So I joined the board of this theater and became their PR for 5 years. And then in 2016, went out freelance as a PR. So I've worked with theaters, musicians, authors, a lot of authors, artists, some businesses, and I'm getting back to nursing to help nurses that are in business with their public relations as well. That's in a nutshell my life, with many moves geographically and reinventions. And I keep my nursing license. I've done a lot of consulting in nursing, but I was in also several clinical areas, med surg, emergency room, recovery room, nursing education, nursing research, and lots of consulting.
Wow.
So there you have it.
That's an incredible background. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for your service as well in the military. Thank you for that. That must have been really interesting to go through all that and see all what you probably saw. And like you said, bureaucracy as well. I'm sure there was a lot of that, and of all of the time nursing and acting as well, and just everything. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Yes,
and
thank you.
Now, before we talk about a few other things, I did want to mention that you do have a book. We are recording this during it's Nurses Week, correct?
It is
And
Nurses Week. Thank you.
yes, it
That
is
does mean a
Nurses
lot to
Week.
me, actually.
When we're recording this, it's being released after. But
Yes.
so
Yes.
you are a poet as well, and you wrote a book. It looks like there's two editions of this book.
There is a second edition. Yeah. I don't know if you
Okay,
can see it in the Zoom. Let's see.
okay.
It's very challenging,
Oh,
but
there it
it's
is.
called, there it is,
Poetic.
kind of
Yeah, there it is.
Poetic
Poetic Expressions,
Expressions
and
in Nursing, Sharing the Caring. So
it's
I originally
beautiful.
wrote it. Thank you. I originally wrote it in 93. And then again, 2021 was the second edition because of COVID and
Hmm.
a lot of anxiety, depression that nurses were going under, even
Oh,
suicide attempts and suicides. And I thought I want to give back to my nursing community by doing this book and showing that creative arts, and mine is poetry, it happens to be poetry, or one of mine, is very cathartic and therapeutic for people with, just struggling, stress management, that kind of thing. So it's been very, very, very much fun sharing the book, talking to different audiences, different book events, excuse me, and such. And I also teach haiku workshops at the San Diego County Library System. So I've been doing that since 2018. So I teach the general public how to use haiku with my photography prompts. I'm a nature photographer. So it all comes together. They write, and we do a blog post, and they get published on my blog. And I'm now wanting to work with that and nursing to use haiku with nurses to get their stories out, because nurses are full of stories within their hearts from all
oh,
the
I bet.
patient care.
Oh, I
Yeah.
bet. And so I'll come back to nursing in a second. So when you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned helping caregivers, well, this I also saw in your bio, helping caregivers, healthcare professionals, and just people who are struggling in general. Art and poetry are very healing. And so, and why is that in the work that you've done with that? How does it help
Well,
heal people?
it helps you. Well, first of all, you need to become mindful if you're going to do any kind of creative art, thinking about it. But specifically with haiku, it is generally not too difficult to do. It centers you. It uses your senses to just capture a moment in time. It's succinct. There might be some juxtaposition or some aha moment when you're writing about or in a haiku. And like I said, I use my photography prompts from nature so that it stimulates people to start writing. And in my workshops, it could be one of my photos or something on their phone, a photo that's on their phone, or just a thought about something in nature. Or a couple of weeks ago, I had a woman start crying in my workshop, and she was writing about her mom who had just passed that month, who was over 100 years old.
Oh,
And this
wow.
poem it was in haiku format, but there were several stanzas. So you never know what you're going to get. But basically, is that the point that you wanted me to
Yeah.
talk about? Like,
Yeah.
it
That it's,
frees you, it
mhm.
releases. It's an, just an undoing or an unwinding, or just leaving something there on that paper or in the computer or on your phone that you could either throw away, share with others, or just keep to yourself. But it's out there. It's out there. You get the story out. That's the point.
Yes, and like you said, you have to get mindful. You have to be mindful when you're creating. You have to kind of get into that flow state. So probably when you're doing that, you're calming down your nervous system, and doing that, of course, is healing because it helps us relax. So I'm
Right.
assuming that it's just very relaxing for people.
Yeah, it's relaxing. And there's been so much research of, visual art. I would love to get involved with someone that does, poetry therapy, and, measure vital signs or something with research someday. But, even with dance, making a film, doing a theater piece, any creative art, crocheting, crafting, exercise, um, crafting your nutrition like you would as a dietitian. Um, there are so many ways to be creative with the arts. And I just happen to love haiku because it's fairly simple to translate and make sense out of. And it's not literary poetry, but it's more from the heart poetry, that the way I teach it.
And
Yeah.
both you and I are familiar with haiku. I was originally, before I was a dietitian, I was an English major, so I had to pretty much study
No
all of this stuff,
way.
English lit and
Wow.
writing. But for people who don't know, what is a haiku?
So haiku is from ancient Chinese poetry, and it's in syllables. So it's usually in a stanza with 3 lines, And the first line is 5 syllables or portions of words, the sounds of the words. The second is 7, and the third is 5. I don't have everything with me to do my whole lecture, but it's a PowerPoint 2-hour lecture that I do. And it's just a way to express your thoughts succinctly. And it does not need to rhyme or anything, but it's rhythm. It's based on rhythm and the sounds of words and your senses. As I said, juxtaposition, possibly something that you don't expect. It's an observation. It's a keen insight. I just absolutely love it. And it's just a way that, like, if I'm out in nature, I'll have my phone with me or my camera with me. I'll see something in nature, say it's a shorebird, at the water, fishing, getting ready to catch a fish. I snap the photo. And then later on that day, or even if I'm there in nature, I grab my phone, I can do the notes, and I can write a haiku right then and there. And then I can publish it on my blog or get it into an anthology, or read it in front of my groups. I'm involved with a poetry group in the area, the San Diego Poetry Annual. I've been in several of those editions. So, you can present your poetry out loud to people. You can keep it to yourself, or you can throw it away, like I said.
And so since you're doing these workshops, is there a pretty, kind of low barrier of entry to writing haikus? Like, so people who have probably maybe have never written creatively before.
Absolutely.
Can they jump in?
Absolutely.
Okay.
They jump in. Yep. And like last week, I can go from like 2 or 3 people up to about 20 live. And I go around the room and I'll say, okay, you've got 6 words here. Let's see what we can do to tweak it to get to 5 or to get to 7, depending on where they're at. And, I'm there to answer any questions. I also do it online. And I'm still thinking about doing a nursing one sometime this month for nurses and for the general public. So it doesn't really matter who you are. But I've been teaching to the general public through the library system since 2018. And it's going very well. It's not extremely popular because a lot of people don't know about it, or maybe never had it in school. I personally don't remember having lessons in haiku in grammar school, middle, or high school. So it's kind of a new thing for me, but it's fun too. And people smile, in fact, I got a message from one of the librarians just yesterday saying this one woman, and it was probably the same one that I'm talking about, said how much she got out of it. And they're inviting me back. And it's like, do you have any pictures from the event? Blah, blah, blah. So the librarians, when they get it and they see the value in it and invite me back, that makes my heart warm, because here I am giving of myself. But when you get it back from an attendee and the librarian, it's fantastic, because they get it. And that's all I want to do. I want to connect with people. And I know how stressful life has been these past few years, and it might continue to be. So it's just one therapeutic avenue to get your word out.
And it does sound so therapeutic. And I loved how you mentioned that it's pretty easy for people. I mean, maybe not easy, but for people to learn how to do. And a lot of us didn't learn about this when we were younger. I do believe in my elementary school, they had a little bit about it. But I mean, I really didn't learn about different styles of poetry until college, just because I majored in that. But for most people, it is brand new, but they're really fun. Now you're back to your book about nursing. So are they mostly haikus in there in your Poetic Expressions?
They're not. They aren't. There are some. And then at the end of the second edition, I added about 7 haiku with some of my photography. But the book, since most of it was from the 90s, I started writing accidentally in 91 after seeing the movie Awakenings. I grew up with a maternal grandmother who had early Alzheimer's, and nobody knew what it was back then. And she passed away in 1971 at age 60. So she had it in her 50s. So in 1991, when I saw that movie, a character reminded me of my grandma right before she passed away, where she was vegetative and mute, but she mumbled at me and knew me. Didn't know my parents anymore, but knew me and connected with me. And that made me cry in the movie theater. Long story short, a couple of days later, my husband was on a business trip. I could not get to sleep. I took my regular remedies, the bath, had a glass of wine, couldn't get to sleep. I grabbed a journal he gave me a Christmas before that was blank. And I sat on the couch all alone. And I wrote this poem, Anne's Zest Ends, and it's from childhood to 20 years after she passed away in 1991, reflecting on Alzheimer's as a disease as a nurse, but starting it as a child and how she was my soulmate, going through different stages with her getting diagnosed and misdiagnosed, and then being institutionalized and going to visit her on day passes, and how sad it was. And it was just extremely sad for our family. And that's why we bottled it up for 20 years. Yeah. And it took my poem, when I read it to my mom the next day, we were in different states at the time, she started crying and she said, I want you to share this with everybody. So I knew that I had something with her reaction, but then I would say that poem out loud in any group I was in, or a chamber of commerce. I was a nurse entrepreneur. And the reaction from people was, this poetry is very powerful. So I kept writing, and it became a book in 93 with a nurse-owned publishing company that's not here anymore. She's passed away. And then I self-published in 2021. So most of the poems are from my life as a nurse. Day shift, night shift, women's empowerment, caregiving, Alzheimer's disease, HIV, since that was fairly new back in the 80s, reflecting on patients that might have that, universal precautions, just all kinds of topics. Some of them rhyme and some are just free form prose, and a few that are in haiku workshop. Format, haiku format. I wrote about my dad when he had open heart surgery, sitting in the waiting room with my mom and drawing pictures for her of what he would look like with which tubes he would have. So I'm just creative in many ways with the art, the nature of photography, poetry, to get stories out.
That sounds wonderful. That sounds wonderful. And so in the description of the book, which I read on your website, you describe nursing as an art as well as a science. Can you talk a little bit about that? My mom she was a nurse. She's retired. And I know that she mentioned something similar to that. I know a lot of nurses, and probably other caregivers would resonate with that.
Absolutely. Well, what I say, one of the portions of one of my poems says, when it's all said and done, there's no profession as diverse as the art and the science of being a nurse. And what that really means is, we learn all of the logistical left brain science with nursing, but there is an art to it too. There is just a way that your demeanor really means a lot to patients when you walk in a room. It could be as much as a look in someone's eye, or, let's put some makeup on you today, to boost somebody's spirit. A warm touch, you're going to be okay. Or I understand you're upset about this or anxious about this. There's an art to communication as a nurse. We learn a lot of the physical nature of nursing, all the pathophysiology and everything. But there's something innate in us that just captures the spirit of caring and knowing what patients are going through. And it's at any time in the life spectrum, from birth to life's demise. So, I really missed some of the days that I was nursing. I liked night shift, and I have a poem in the book about night shift, and it's just very peaceful and calm, and you get to review the notes and that kind of thing. Whereas day shift is hustle bustle, profoundly busy. And hummingbirds remind me of nursing because they're flitting around faster and, up from this tree to that tree, just like a day shift. So there's a lot of parallels with nursing and other things that I write about. And I use poetry to express joy, happiness, but also fear, anger, values clarification, so many things. And when we had the pandemic, there was such mystery. We all got through it. This is 4 years later, right? And I wrote poetry, and I was published in some anthologies and the San Diego Union Tribune at the time because of, what was I thinking then? Was I afraid? Was I angry when I saw people not being careful when they were up at the microphone and not wiping, using hand sanitizer, all different emotions. And so, it's therapeutic. It really is, and cathartic. You get that word out. Yeah.
And so, but you said that you had a lot of stories. Can you share any stories? I don't know if it's okay to do. I know there's like privacy and stuff, but if there's
Oh,
something from a
you
long
mean,
time ago from nursing, any story that kind of stuck out to you, with,
yes,
keeping
there's a
information
story, and
from.
it's also a poem in the book too.
Oh, okay.
Um,
And if you wouldn't, I would love to,
it's,
if you wouldn't mind reading one, but
do you have some
yeah,
time? You do?
yes, I
Okay.
do.
So here's night shift. I could do night shift first
Sure.
because this is really how, since we were talking about it. Night shift. Night shift. So dear to me, despite its circadian disruption, the nocturnal rhythm sublime, so inviting, so relaxing, making rounds with flashlight in hand and night vision intuition, the serenity envelops me. Side rails up, call bells within reach, bedsides tidy, breathing in sequence, snores and noises unspeakable during prime time, status quo during night shift. Gentle and peaceful, those who by day lurk and cry and pester, and now between midnight and 7 are compliant and yearn for peace as well. Alas, time to review and verify and stuff and thin the charts. Time to read the progress notes. Finally, a time to put it all together, like spies looking for the clues of their lives. And if one is truly lucky, there are some chosen patients who decide it is time during night shift to ventilate, truly share, opening up the dam of their fears, thoughts, feelings, even sharing stories, enhancing our knowing. Oh, please, I yearn for these nights when the nature of nursing facilitates the connection of lives. I just got chills reading it.
Wonderful.
I
That's
was
so
like,
beautifully written.
I wrote that so long ago, and yet I just treasure night shifts. I worked many, many night shifts in my time in the military too.
Oh,
And
okay.
we used to rotate nights, evenings, and days. And our circadian, that's why I talked about the
Oh,
circadian
yeah,
rhythm, because we would
that's
get
tough.
to go from one or the other.
Well,
But
by
the
the way, that was a
story,
beautiful poem. Before you talk about the
oh,
story
thank
behind it, it's
you.
real beautifully written. It's wonderful. It's absolutely
Thank
wonderful. We really have a way with words. So the
you.
story behind it, yeah, you can, if you have
That's the
any
story behind
stories,
it. I
because you
wrote
said a lot of the patients,
many.
they would sometimes open up at night. So did some patients, so
They
they would
would.
open up?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, when I was in the Navy, um, I took care of a lot of Vietnam vets, and there was we called it the day room or the solarium. So it was like the patient lounge at the end because it was a military hospital. So they had this lounge that the
Hmm.
patients could go to. And many a nights I would go down there after making rounds or whatever, and I'd see one or two guys in there. I was on a male general medicine ward at the time. This is like 1978 to 80 or so. And I would say to them, please put that cigarette out because they could smoke at the time.
Oh, really? In the
Let's
hospital?
talk.
Oh,
I'd say,
wow.
let's chat. And you would not believe the stories that would come out about Vietnam. So
Wow.
all they needed was somebody to just sit there and listen to them, active listening. So that's the story. And then one of the others that I was saying, this is from a true story. I remember, I don't know if I should read the story or the poem first. What would you
Whatever
like
you,
first?
whatever you would like. I'll leave it up to you.
I'm going to read the poem first and
Okay.
then we can talk. Called Spousal Intuition. The ICU 12-hour shift almost through at 5:10 p.m. that day. Mr. H was transferred to our haven, confused, impending doom in disarray. His charge nurse gave a quickened transfer report. They couldn't define what was wrong. He was just so different after the x-ray. He'll be sent via bed now, so long. Boom, phone rang. Within minutes 5, he and bed did arrive, then vitals, O2, IV, and leads. His life traveled downhill, shally resps, tachy pulse, low BP, O2 sat down indeed. Sitting upright so ashen, he said, I'm not breathing well. I'm so thirsty, nurse. Can I have a drink? Please call my wife. Am I going to die? Then the monitor alarms wailed in sync. He grew grayer in bigeminy, coughed frothy sputum, and stared. He trusted this was his last life's sail. We bolused with Lasix and lidocaine and did what we could to no avail. Sadly, he coded at 5:25, enveloped in VTAC and fib rhythms. Despite ACLS, our team efforts had failed. Then when everyone left, I stayed with him. We notified his wife, an invalid, homebound. Her aide brought her in for the viewing. He asked for you at the end, He asked for you at the end, I explained. She sighed, hugged me, cried. some renewing. But what was so coincidental, her home health aide said, was that at 5:15 at home, Mrs. H was awakened by a dream while in bed. She sat up, yelled, "My husband," and moaned. And so I must tell you to listen actively to our patients who tell us a story. Believe them in what they're telling us. Believe them, for they know the glory. Take heed in their words and intuition. Our mission's to save them above all odds, but sometimes there's a strong, eerie vision for the ultimate visit with their gods.
Oh,
True
it's
story.
really,
True
really well
story.
written. It was a wonderful poem.
But I mean, it just poured out because it happened with when I remember taking care of him after he passed, and here's the wife in a wheelchair with her aide, and she told me that, and it was like,
Wow.
wow. He sat up in bed. He knew he was going. She sat up at home. They connected, even being
Wow.
away from each other at that time. Husband and wife. True story.
Wow.
Chills.
That's incredible. Wow. Wow.
Profound.
And that was really, really
It's
nicely
profound.
written. It
And
is.
and I think, and one of the things I do value is my intuition, and nurses have keen intuition most of the time. We can sense something going on. We can sense that somebody's going to crash, or we can sense somebody's going to wake up and remember things and connect with us again. It's a very, very interesting life, and it is our identity. I mean, I'm still, even though I'm not clinical anymore, I am still a nurse. I still keep my license up. I'm active in the community somewhat, and I stay on LinkedIn, and I, communicate with nurses, and I'm trying to get the haiku workshop to nurses for their wellness programs that they have. I've done one in San Francisco last year. So it's a slow process because they have to be ready and open, the institutions or organizations, but
Right.
I'm ready to deliver as they are open.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That would be great if you could do that. That especially since they do have the workplace wellness and like you had said, so
Right,
many,
right.
of course, and we're all aware of this, that after COVID, so many healthcare workers in general, especially nurses, are extremely burned out. And
Oh,
like you said, at the
absolutely.
time, depressed, sadly, sometimes
Hmm.
suicidal. And
Absolutely.
this could really
Absolutely.
help them. And this is also probably really therapeutic for caregivers in general, say if there's somebody that's caring for a sick relative as well. The
Absolutely.
poetry. And did you think maybe reading poetry as well could be therapeutic?
Absolutely, sure. I mean, it's whatever you connect with. Some people want to listen. That's why I did my book as a as an audiobook as well as an ebook as a paperback. So there's different versions for people's styles that they like to learn from or read about, whatever, or listen to. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So because it
Right.
opens your heart when you're listening, and even when I was listening to you read the poems, you really just get immersed in it. And yeah, I can see how it's very therapeutic for people, but probably even
Thank
more
you.
so to write, probably even more so to write it
Yeah.
themselves.
Well, I'm, doing PR too. I'm a communicator, and having some acting experience in film and in theater. you- I become that poem because it's my truth, and I want to connect with and reach people in that way, and that's my nursing coming through. It's just inevitable. Um, it's also challenging. Not everybody could do it,
Oh,
so
that's
it's
true.
taken years. It's taken years. And now there are like new crops of nurses coming out with. I just heard about another haiku book coming out from a nurse. So it's
Oh,
like, and I don't know them, we've never, but I've been doing poetry since the 90s, and I'm still at it, and I still love it as much, if not more. And just trying to, get the word out about it as something else to do besides eating too much, drinking too much, substances, whatever people are doing, that they should be writing poetry
yes, write
in a,
poetry instead.
a healthy way, right?
Yes, it's
So,
a healthy way of coping.
yeah,
Now,
exactly.
how can people work with you if somebody wants to join one of your workshops? I don't know, do you work one-on-one helping people,
I
with
can
poetry writing?
I can do groups, and I can do them in person. So I'm very, very open. My website is sjfcommunications.com. And it stands for my name, Susan J. Farese. So sjfcommunications.com. And you can go to the menus on top, and there's one that says haiku workshops. and then another that is about my book, the author page, and things like that. I'm on social media. Usually my name is at SJFCOMMO, short for communications.
Okay.
So I'm on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or X, whatever it's called now.
Yeah.
I'm on TikTok a little bit. Just when I do a book event, I'll
Cool.
go on TikTok as well. Yeah, find me. I'm very open to feeling, what the best format would be for people's groups, or even small groups. Large groups, you can't really do the haiku too well with a very large group. That's why I cap it usually at 20.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I would love to. And yeah, please feel free to get the word out through your podcast, and
Oh, I am for sure.
tell your mom to
Yes.
contact me. I'd
Oh,
love to hear
yes.
some of her.
Oh,
I mean,
yes.
in nursing too, we have so many different specialties,
Mhm.
and I've worked in many, many adult specialties, just not pediatrics, not
Mhm.
psychiatry, and
Oh,
not
yes.
OBGYN,
Oh,
but a
okay.
lot of adults. So
I believe she did
yeah,
adults mainly, and she was a visiting nurse for a while, which I know she really liked. I know
home
she really
health.
liked that.
Yeah,
Yes, home health.
I have a poem in here, ode to the home health nurse, also. So
Oh, nice. Well,
yes.
I'm sure she would like to look at it, and I hope you'll be able to work with some of the nurses organizationally, and that's great. I do see,
So
people are talking more and more about art therapy, and now as well writing as well. So I think it's just going to continue. So I'm sure you'll be
exactly.
very busy with this.
I think so too. In fact, I just wrote the blog that you saw was with a nurse on the East Coast. I'm in San Diego and she was in
Mhm.
the Boston area, and we collaborated. She reached out to me because she heard me on another podcast talking about my haiku and PR. And so tomorrow I'm releasing the podcast that we did along with this blog.
Oh,
And we talk about the value of doing art, visual art, and poetry, because we do both. Both of us do both.
hmm.
We also started a group on Facebook called Nursing and the Arts. So it's a Facebook group,
Okay.
and we're fairly young. We have, like, I think only about 23 people in it now. So so any nurses out there that are listening, please join our group, especially if you practice one of the creative arts. I think that'll be fun. And with the podcast, and, um, you know, who knows where we'll go with this by next year. I just really want to continue spreading the word about the value of creative arts wherever you are and whatever you do.
Definitely. And I like how you said earlier that so many things are creative. A lot of people don't think they're creative because they can't draw, or, they don't act or sing. But like you had mentioned, knitting, even exercise, creating a recipe. A lot of things
Exactly.
are creative. I think all of
Mm-hmm.
us have that ability. Like you said, I agree with that. All right.
I have one poem to finish off
Oh,
with.
yes, that would be wonderful.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. It's called The Process. So this is about poetry.
Okay.
The process. It's the spark, the ignition, the moment, the magic, the creation, the passion, the healing, the uniqueness, the sharing, the humbleness, the solitude, the brotherhood, the catharsis, the insight, the knowing, the process of poetry.
I love
There you
that.
have it.
Very, very
All
well
those.
done. Very well done. And very, very thoughtful. It makes you really think. That's about poetry when you listen to it. It really, makes you think. I really like
Well,
that.
life is so busy and there's so much going on. We have so many
Yeah.
choices constantly with
Tell
all
me
the,
about it.
the media and such. So this brings you back to nature, or, solitude or mindfulness. And I think we need that a little bit more
I
as
do
well
too.
in life.
I do too. Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I thank you for bringing it to people. It's really needed, and your voice,
My
it's very
pleasure.
important. So, well, thank you so much for joining me on A Teaspoon of Healing, and good luck with your podcast as well, with your launch. Sounds
Thank
great.
you.
I'll
Thank you.
keep an
We're
eye out
just
for
getting
that.
started.
That's so great.
I may come invite you.
Uh,
It's called Nursing and the Arts right now, but I may do one for reinvention, or, other topics as well,
Sure.
not just the specific nursing. So
Sure. Oh,
we'll
so it's
see.
going to be
I'm
about
sure we'll be
nursing and the
connecting.
arts, the podcast. That's great. That's a great niche. So,
Yes.
okay, that would
Yes.
be wonderful. All right. Well,
Thank you.
thanks again, Susan, and I hope you have a wonderful evening.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Susan, you remember the time we were in Orange County? We were driving around and we got lost, and we ran into this place called
Avila's El Ranchito.
You remember the place? The place had awesome decor and authentic margaritas.
Did you know that Avila's El Ranchito has been around since 1966? They have 13 locations throughout Orange County. Visit Salvador Avila's location in Lake Forest and Foothill Ranch for great food, ambiance, and specialty margaritas.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. Please consult a physician or other health professional before undertaking changes in lifestyle or wellness habits. The author claims no responsibility to any person or entity for any liability, loss, or damage caused or alleged to be caused directly or indirectly as a result of use, application, or interpretation of the information presented herein.